Shalom, family. Good to see you all here. Hope you're doing well. Well, in the very beginning, I told y'all as time moved along, these federal workers will start calling out because they don't want to work for free. And that's exactly what's happening with the air traffic controllers. They are calling out nationwide, which is a very dangerous thing because they are the ones that direct traffic at your airport. And the law, in the TSA officers, same situation. Many of them are calling out, and they said the lines are getting longer and the wait time is getting longer as well, which should not be a surprise. I tell you what, you couldn't pay me to fly now with all of this stuff going on. You couldn't pay me to do it. But I know some people, you may have to travel for your business, or it may be a sick family member or a funeral. I understand. But I don't feel it would be a safe thing for myself to fly right now. Looking at the conditions out here, you got a lot of people that are disgruntled. They are angry that they have to show up for work. And Donald Trump, he came straight out at a press conference and said they shouldn't get back pay. So, who would want to get up and work for that kind of person? No one. So, it's rough. And I have a feeling when the holiday travels start kicking up, it's going to get horrifying at these airports. It's probably going to be terrifying looking at the large size of the crowds, and on top of that, you're short people because you're not paying them. I can't even imagine how bad it will get. So y'all, let me go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. Please give me a one if you can see my screen. Thank you.
Air traffic controller staffing. We have seen an increase in what the FAA calls staffing triggers, basically staffing shortages at FAA facilities. We're seeing that more often than we normally would, and our data unit has been tracking this since the shutdown began. We have noticed a marked increase in these staffing triggers since the shutdown began. We have not seen that result in massive cancellations or an area being paralyzed like we saw about 30 days into the 2018-2019 shutdown, but we're seeing these staffing issues show up much sooner than we did then. At this point, air traffic controllers are working without pay, but they have yet to miss a paycheck, and already we are seeing staffing issues. Most notably, we saw it at Burbank Airport, where that tower went to ATC 0, and what that means is basically for at least part of a shift, there were no controllers in that air traffic control tower at a fairly significant airport in the Southern California area. Controllers at other facilities handled the flights, but there were significant delays. However, that wasn't the only staffing shortage yesterday. We saw staffing triggers at airports like Newark Airport. That's not terribly unusual. We saw it in Denver. That's a little bit more unusual. We saw it here in Phoenix. That's unusual. Also, Indianapolis, Washington Center, which is a air traffic control facility outside the Washington, D.C. area. And our data team has noticed we've seen an increase, sometimes 10 or more of these staffing issues on any given day since the shutdown. That's atypical. Now, the Air Traffic Controllers Union says what we saw on Monday was normal, that it's normal to see some number of sick calls on any given day. The data would indicate that what we're seeing is not normal, that we are seeing an elevated number of sick calls. That's resulting in an increase in delays. We have not seen a spike in cancellations. We have not seen yet what happened towards the end of the last lengthy shutdown, where the New York City airspace was essentially paralyzed because of air traffic control staffing issues. But we're seeing this all start to play out much earlier than we did in 2018, 2019. So it's something we're watching very closely. Bottom line for flyers, when there's a staffing issue, there aren't enough people, the FAA will slow down the number of flights going in and out of that airport or passing through that region. That means delays for flyers, but they slow it down to maintain safety. Right now, we're seeing some delays. We're not seeing major disruption.
Flights will be canceled. Y'all, if y'all traveling, especially during the holidays via airplane, expect delays and even cancellations. According to U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, he also states this, that 50% of air traffic control facilities has reported staff shortages. And then he wants everyone to know this as well. When one air traffic controller do two jobs, a level of risk has been injected in the system. Right now, air traffic controllers and staff is being paid by whatever dollars they can get, since the standard funding has been cut. My name is Tiffany. I lost 150 pounds in 2.5 years, and I also report different news topics as such today. Tap in.
Ladies and gentlemen, all these cancellations are uncontrollable.
If you're flying soon, heads up. Major delays are hitting airports across the U.S. According to CBS News, airports like Burbank, Denver, and Newark are seeing trouble because there aren't enough air traffic controllers on duty. On one day, more than 8,700 U.S. flights were delayed. And at one airport, arrivals were limited to only about 20 planes per hour. The shortage comes as these essential workers, controllers, are working without pay during the government shutdown. The system is being slowed down to keep things safe. Major hubs affected include Newark Liberty International Airport, EWR, where delays of up to 3 hours have been reported. Also, ripple effects in cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, Dallas, and Denver.
Right, Colleen. In fact, we just spoke to air traffic controllers here at Burbank Airport in the last few minutes, and they can now confirm.
Tower, this is Flight 247 requesting landing clearance. Tower, did you copy that? I'll circle around.
Jorge, is the government preparing for more problems on the horizon?
It does seem that way as of right now, Natasha. Major airports across the U.S. are now experiencing some major delays with those staffing shortages. The FAA did say that heading into the weekend, there was a surge of call-outs of air traffic controllers, and the FAA adding that air traffic controllers are still working without receiving a pay, and that these workers are under immense stress and fatigue. The FAA continuing to urge the government to end the shutdown immediately to avoid any potential further delays for travelers. Airports across the country are overwhelmed, with around 4,000 flights delayed and more than 200 canceled, leaving passengers stuck for hours. And after more than 30 days without pay, the FAA says nearly 13,000 air traffic controllers are still showing up, but callouts are spiking. And in New York, nearly 80% of controllers were absent. The FAA now openly warning traffic flow is being slowed on purpose to keep flights safe, meaning fewer planes in the air and longer wait times on the ground.
Do we really want to stress our air traffic controller system in our nation? They are the eyes in the skies. They're the ones that allow us to fly safely. Do we really want to break them to their point?
Controllers and TSA officers got their last partial paycheck weeks ago. Unions say that thousands of safety techs and inspectors who work on FAA radars, navigation systems, and even airline inspections are furloughed or unpaid.
America's air travel is feeling the shutdown. Over 20 airports report air traffic controller shortages, and even LAX briefly paused inbound flights due to staffing gaps. The FAA says facilities across the system are running thin, triggering more delays and cancellations. Why so short-staffed? Controllers are essential, so they must work without pay during the shutdown. After missing paychecks, many are calling out picking up side jobs just to cover bills. The NATCA union warns fatigue and morale are reaching a breaking point, while the DOT acknowledges at least 22 affected locations in a single day. Meanwhile, reports note that some DHS law enforcement roles like ICE or CBP are funded through special mechanisms controllers are not. If you're flying today, check your airline app, arrive early, and expect rolling ground delays at major hubs.
Quick update on travel. Over the past 48 hours, U.S. air travel is feeling serious ripple effects from the shutdown. More than 8,000 flights were delayed on Sunday as controller absences stacked up, with the Federal Aviation Administration logging staffing shortages at 22 locations across the country. At Los Angeles International Airport and nearby hubs, a ground stop was issued Sunday due to controller shortfalls, causing cascading delays across the West Coast. With more than 13,000 controllers and roughly 50,000 TSA officers working without pay, industry leaders warn that the system's fragility is growing by the day. If you're flying this week, check your status, expect extra time, and approach your trip with a flexible mindset.
Breaking. Over 1,000 flights delayed amid U.S. shutdown-related air traffic controller absences.
Heads up for anyone who has to do any air travel during the government shutdown. Here in Atlanta, at the world's busiest airport today, we had delays of around 98 minutes because of staffing shortages. That's according to the FAA. They also said that nearly half of the major air traffic control facilities had some sort of impacts because of the staffing shortages. So it's very important that you check with your airline. Check those apps before you leave the house so that you can check your flight status. Also, allow extra time to get through TSA security. They're also going through the same ordeal as well. As a former flight attendant, here's a tidbit. Flight attendants and pilots have a certain number of hours that they can work throughout the day. So that means that they cannot work extended hours just because of these delays. It does look like major airlines are trying to make different plans to adjust to the ongoing concerns. But you want to make sure that you are checking your flight status consistently throughout your travel.
Did you get on a plane if an air traffic controller hasn't been paid in weeks? So this weekend, U.S. airports reported over 20 air traffic controller situations in one day. 20. So on Saturday alone, there were so many air traffic controller shortages at a Los Angeles airport, they had to temporarily stop service altogether. And it covered most of Southern California. Then by Sunday, 6 other airports were dealing with shortfalls. And listen, the Trump administration is warning people it's gonna get worse. So let me piece together for y'all what's happening, right? Air traffic controllers and TSA are essential, but they don't get paid during the shutdown. Meanwhile, your congressman and your senator, who apparently ain't essential at all, still cashing checks while refusing to do their jobs. Make it make sense. How long do y'all really expect air traffic controllers and TSA folks to keep working without getting paid? Would you? I know I couldn't. That's some stupid shit. The shutdown has real consequences for hardworking Americans, but Trump and the Republicans, they don't care. Because y'all, when government doesn't work, rich people still win. Rich people don't rely on public systems. They can fly private, skip TSA altogether, and never feel the pain. So while the rich are comfortable, the rest of us are trusting our lives to people who are not being paid, who got to think about how they're going to survive during this time frame. Flying right now is a dangerous business. And if they don't wake you up, I don't know what will, because I've been telling you since January to stop getting your ass on planes.
On October 31st, Orlando International briefly stopped allowing planes to land because there weren't enough certified air traffic controllers on duty. The FAA said landings were temporarily not possible, and some travelers faced delays up to 4 hours. Nationwide, nearly 800 flights were delayed and about 1,050 canceled. Around 13,000 controllers have been working without pay during the shutdown, and the agency is roughly 3,500 controllers short of its staffing goals. Training a new controller takes 2 to 3 years, so recovering staffing won't be quick. At airports, TSA and customs lines stretched longer, and some services ran at reduced capacity. Officials say safety remains the top priority, and they're using ground delay programs and traffic metering to manage flights. But with the holidays approaching, leaders warn disruptions could grow if funding isn't restored. For travelers, the practical steps are simple. Check airline alerts, build extra time into travel plans, and expect last-minute changes. This is a developing situation that could affect many holiday trips, so stay informed and plan ahead.
Thousands of flights have been delayed across the country this week as the government shutdown enters its 8th day. In fact, more than 2,500 flights were delayed just today. In an interview with Fox News, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said controllers calling out sick were a significant reason for the huge spike in delays.
Historically, there's about a 5% of delays that is attributed to staffing issues in our towers. In the last couple of days, it's been 53%. And so my message to the air traffic controllers who work for DOT is show up for work. The bottom line is these controllers are stressed out and they're rebelling on this shutdown because they may not get paid. They're working 6 days a week. They're keeping America operational and they're not guaranteed a paycheck and they're frustrated by it.
Air traffic controllers have reportedly called out sick in large numbers in Las Vegas, Denver, Phoenix, Chicago, and Newark. Earlier this week, Burbank Airport didn't have any controllers in its primary tower. Air traffic controllers, as essential workers, are required to work during a shutdown, but are now doing so without pay. Joining me now to break this all down is our aviation correspondent, Miles O'Brien. So, Miles, help us understand this ripple effect we're seeing now from government shutdown through to the thousands of flight delays we're seeing.
I think we're seeing so many ripples because the pond is a little bit shallow. The FAA is short 3,000 certified controllers. And so it doesn't take a lot of sick individuals to have a consequence on the scheduling. The union, which represents the air traffic controllers, says there's no purposeful campaign here to. These are individuals that have been working under great stress as the system has been short-staffed for so long. We've been documenting all kinds of issues associated with this that the FAA has not addressed. And I'm certain that the stress levels on these controllers is increased. So there might be just some natural need for them to take a little bit of time off. And I doubt that anybody who flies the airlines would begrudge a controller time off if he felt too stressed out to work.
Miles, that report from Burbank Airport really got a lot of attention. They went without air traffic controllers for hours late on Monday night. How did that not end up in disaster? And what happens in the system when there's a situation like that?
Well, there's a couple of layers of safety involved here. First of all, the radar rooms, which control the access as you get closer to the airports. Those radar rooms can be switched out remotely, assuming there's appropriate amount of bandwidth. In other words, you don't have to be sitting at that Burbank Airport. Now, when you get to the field, though, you need an individual in the control tower to decide who's going to land, who's going to take off, and so forth. But pilots have a routine and a set of rules for approaching uncontrolled airports. It happens frequently all day long at thousands of uncontrolled fields all across the country. We all get on a specific frequency, the common traffic advisory frequency, and we tell each other where we are, and the system works relatively safely. But as you can see, at a larger airport, it wouldn't be so efficient, and it obviously would slow things down.
So, Miles, is this something we should anticipate seeing more of? Airports relying on other facilities, air traffic controllers working remotely, and what are the concerns or potential risks of that?
Yeah, there'll be more of that. You know, we want to keep individuals in the towers. There's no remote control tower capability. You can move work from one radar room to another to try to compensate for staffing issues, et cetera. But, you know, eventually this slows down the system dramatically. Things become less efficient. The number of radio calls slow down. What you end up with a system that starts slowing to a crawl.
Let me ask you a funding question here now, because funding is at the heart of this. The body that provides federal funding for air travel in rural areas, the EAS, or the Essential Air Service, that runs out of money on Sunday if the government shutdown continues. And that funds regional air carriers in some 177 communities across all 50 states. Miles, if the shutdown continues through Sunday, what's going to be the impact of that funding running out?
Well, 177 small communities. These are places that are about 90 minutes away from another airport. And so there's a subsidy which allows the airlines to fly to them and provide service. There are 60 of these communities in Alaska alone, 177 total. And what that means is, unless the airlines want to pull some money out of their pockets and fund it, which is unlikely, that service will end. And that means, obviously, a threat to business and tourism. But most importantly, think about those 60 communities in Alaska where perhaps the only way to get medicine and people to medical care and hospitals is by air. So this has really important and potentially grave consequences.
Miles, in the minute or so we have left, speak directly to the air travelers out there, myself among them. What should we be anticipating and preparing for in the days ahead?
All right. Well, the big takeaway here I want people to understand is that the system is dialing back its capacity, but that does not mean it is dialing back safety. So from an airline traveler's perspective, you don't need to worry about safety, but you do have to show up a lot earlier. And a word to the wise, if all things are equal, book an early morning flight. They tend to be the flights which don't delay as much. And it is a more likely chance that you're going to fly on time. I don't want people to be worried necessarily. These controllers, as the workforce is stressed and shrinks, so will the air traffic. And as a result, the safety should not be impacted.
It's our aviation correspondent, Miles O'Brien, with some great tips and great information tonight, as always. Miles, thank you. Good to speak with you.
You're welcome, Anna.
Well, y'all, you see that? One airport said no air traffic controllers were there at night. That is like insane. And see, if you're on the plane, they're not going to let you know that. They're not going to tell the passengers that they're short air traffic controllers, you know, because then they know they're going to lose a lot of people from flying. But man, you know, if you don't have to, I would advise you not to fly. You know, if you can travel somewhere by car or, or you can travel and carpool with family or somebody from your job, do that. But hopping on a plane, no, no, it's absolutely crazy right now. But it's going to be a lot of very unknowing people trying to fly in just a few weeks. And, you can't assume that everybody is keeping up with what's going on out here because everybody don't. There's a lot of people that are going to get on that plane and just assume these government workers are just there and they're working even if they're not getting paid. And that's not necessarily true. And y'all, it would be a catastrophe if these folks somewhere along the line said, you know what, all of us are just going to call out sick. And that would be a huge problem. It may even break the country if they all refuse to go to work. But Donald Trump seems to think they're okay, to be out there working for free. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's right for Congress and senators to get paid, and most of them are millionaires. But the people that are working federal jobs that are not rich, yeah, they got to work for free. I don't know who came up with this, but like I said, this is what happens when the criminals write the law. So y'all, if you are a federal employee, man, you have my sympathy right now, especially if you are working and not getting paid. I look at my postal worker every day that's not getting paid, and I think that's a disgrace. I really do. it is somebody like your mail carrier, they are bringing your mail for free. And I just think that's outrageous. I really do. Mhm. Well, yeah, a lot of them are calling out sick. I mean, and this is all the way across the board. It's not just the airport. It's a lot of federal workers all the way across the board are calling out. But if you go back and look at the shutdown in Donald Trump's first administration, towards the end, there were a lot of people calling out. They did not want to get up and work for free. And then they reopened the government and those folks got all their back pay. But this time, he don't want to give them back pay. He talking about only the people that deserve it. Well, define who deserves it. So the only ones he wants to pay is the FBI and the military. But everybody else can't get paid. Mm-mm-mm. My coworkers and federal employees are talking about quitting or yeah, I would not blame them. But aren't they under a contract? If they're furloughed, I don't think they can look for another job while they're in furlough. Am I wrong? At least that's what I heard. If they're on furlough, they can't um just find another job and quit. It just seems like the way they got that government contract written is kind of weird. Mm-mm-mm. Well, Cash Patel thanked Donald Trump for paying the FBI agents like 2 weeks ago. So they're not getting paid because he did it on TV. He said, "I want to thank Donald Trump for paying the FBI agents." And Cash Patel thanked Donald Trump for that. So that they didn't get paid. Hmm. Oh no, that contract sounds pretty demonic. Okay, I understand Bougie Barbie. Okay. Yeah, well, that's yeah, because I do see the videos of some of them just getting up and you can see them walking in to a federal building, and then, of course, they turn their phones off, just before you can see where they're going. But, they're like, "I still gotta get up and go to work for free." But, man, if more people keep calling out all the time, which that seems to be the case, people are calling out, I mean, I can understand. Yeah, I saw Dick Cheney, yeah, he finally went home to the deep part of hell. Yeah, I did see that earlier today. Mhm. Oh, yeah, not paying you, that's right down Donald Trump's alley. He don't like paying people. Mhm. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. I just have a feeling this is gonna go all the way through December. I just don't see them starting this up, not unless people fold. But Donald Trump, I think that move in trying to make people starve, um, that is number one. He think that makes the Democrats look bad. Actually, it makes him look bad. And you're going to use people as pawns and make them starve. I mean, that is sick that he even have that kind of mindset, but he does. So if a man is going to make a population of people starve, he don't give a crap about no federal employees. And aren't some of the federal employees getting fired? Because I read something about a week ago that Donald Trump is still firing people. He wanted to do a mass firing. And a week ago, when I was looking at some articles, it said he was still firing people. People were still losing their federal jobs. Mm-mm-mm. So I don't know, but I'm just saying, I know I read that not long ago. So, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and conclude. Thank you so much for being here. I deeply appreciate it. And everybody, please enjoy your night. Boy, it gets dark so early now. I hate it. I do not like I like the daylight to be longer. I don't know. When it's a shorter day, I don't like it. I don't like it, y'all. I don't like shorter days, but I have no choice but to live through it, don't I? Yeah. Oh, so the postal workers are getting paid? That's not what I heard, but okay. Well, I know UPS, which I use for my business. I got an account with them, a business account. They're getting ready to do a major layoff, a big one. I don't know if my driver, because I get the same guy every single day, but I don't know if my driver is going to be laid off. Maybe I'll pop out one day and just talk to him. But UPS is getting ready to have a big, big layoff. Yes, in fact, it's listed. The Edge Butter Chemi is listed. So yes, it is available. So somebody was asking me about the Botano oil. That is listed as well. Everything's back. So if you haven't had a chance to go over and check out the store, you should, because there's a lot of things that have been relisted. So y'all, I will see you all tomorrow. Shalom, family.